Tamang kaalaman, tungo sa malayang kaisipan. Ako po si Ferdy Isleta.
Ang kultura ay susi sa kadakilaan. Ako po si Annie Luis.
Isang oras lang ang kailangan. Ako po si Renena Peñas. At ito ang
Padayon Presents, the NCCA Hour.
Sulong na!
Padayon, the NCCA Hour. Sulong na! Ako po si Arsenio Nick Lizazo, tagapangulo ng Pambansang Komisyon para sa Kultura at mga Sining. Inihahandog namin sa inyo ang Sagisag Kultura TV.
Madalas natin sukatin ang kaunlaran ng isang bansa base sa mga konkretong bagay na ating nakikita sa pamayan ng ating kinabibilangan, mga bagay na ating napakikinabangan at nagagamit upang umalwan at umangat ang antas ng ating pamumuhay bilang mamamayan.
Kaunlarang ating minimithi bilang isang bayan, hinahabol at patuloy na hinahanap sa napakahabang panahon, ngunit wari napakailap at nananatiling pangarap. Marahil ang tunay na kaunlarang pambansa na ating minimithi ay higit pa sa mga istrukturang ating kayang buuin, higit pa sa mga tulay na ating kayang itayo upang tayo'y pagbuklurin at pag-isahin bilang bayan tungo sa tunay at malalim na kahulugan ng kaunlaran at pambansang katatagan.
Ito ang tungkuling ginagampanan ng ating kultura, ang ating kalinangang patuloy na nagpapaalala sa atin bilang mamamayan kung sino tayo bilang Filipino. Ano ang ating tunay na mga lakas bilang isang lahi? Kalinangan siya ring pinagmumulan ng tunay na kapangyarihan upang likain ang anuman landas ng ating pipiliing tahaking bilang Filipino, bilang Pilipinas.
Sa panibagong yugto ng ating makabuluhang paglalakbay, tayo'y manumbalik sa ating mga dakilang ugat upang muling hanapin ang sarili bilang Filipino at pinakadiwa ng kaunlarang tunay na Filipino. Dito sa Sagisag Kultura TV.
Halina't kami samahan sa panibagong serya ng paglalakbay tungo sa iba't ibang bayan upang tuklasin ang mga natatanging bagay na nagbibigay sigla sa kulturang Filipino. Mula sa mga kwentong kasaysayan nagpapatotoo sa ating kadakilaan, mga pagdiriwang sumasalamin sa mga pinahahalagahang paniniwala at kabayanihan ng mamamayan.
Mga kabuhayang refleksyon ng ating henyo at pagkamalikhain, mga talentong nagpapaningning sa ating sining, lahat ng ito at marami pang iba, unang bayang ating pupuntahan, naku, huwag kang mabibigla. Tulad ng kanilang kanyong mga pinapasabog, mga matutuklasan sa bayang ito'y sa inyong kamalayan ay bubulabog.
Kari dayon kamo, Halina't ating tuklasin ang
Likhang Yaman ng Bago. Dahil sa angking halagang pangkasaysayan at saganang flora at fauna, hindi katakatakang matawag na home of historical and natural treasures ang lungsod ng Bago na matatagpuan sa lalawigan ng Negros Occidental. May layong 21 kilometro mula sa Bacolod na siyang kabisera ng lalawigan. Binubuo ng 24 na barangay ang lungsod ng Bago. Ang kanyang mga hangganan ay ang lungsod ng Bacolod at bayan ng Murcia sa Hilaga, Guimaras, Strait sa Hilagang Kanluran, mga bayan ng Valladolid at Pulupandan sa Timog Kanluran, ang lungsod ng San Carlos at Canlaon sa Silangan at lungsod ng La Carlota sa Timog.
We are host 3/4 of the forest cover of Negros Occidental. It is in Bago side. And that speaks a lot of Bagonhons in the sense that we value and we treasure our natural resources. By saying that, naturally we are an agricultural economy, an agricultural city. We have abundant flora and fauna, but in terms of livelihood, we have abundant water. And that makes us the rice granary of the province.
If you look at the old maps, 1500, 1700, Bago is already there. When the Spaniards landed, they landed somewhere in south. They moved up. And Bago was already had communities then, obviously, because we were put under a visita of Binalbagan. And that's about several towns away. That means we have already communities here that grew and grew. It's mostly in the river, the Bago River. It's just purely agricultural before.
It starts with our slogan that we're the home of historical and natural treasures. That defines how we are as a people and as a city. Historical in the sense that Bago City played a major role in the revolution that happened in 1898. Al 5 de Noviembre, as it is known is the uprising of Negrense, that's Negros Occidental, against the foreign tyranny, and General Juan Araneta, who comes from Bago City, played a major role in the surrender of the Spaniards in 1898. And that day, November 5, 1898, it is a history of Negrense that is commemorated by the whole province. But even before the province commemorated Al 5 de Noviembre, Bago City already had its Al 5 de Noviembre celebrations in commemoration of the hero Juan Araneta.
There's a lot of stories and about Bago. One of the most popular is along the banks of the river was the shrub called Bago, which we presume that's where Bago comes from.
We are just about 21 kilometers from Bacolod City, who has begun to be a sort of a metropolis. And yet, our proximity does not allow us yet to become urban people. We are still rural dwellers. And I value that a lot because you get peace and quiet. I always tell the people, let's not hurry. You cannot rush development.
We are very known for that, on that historical side of the Bago City. Bago City hosted the Visayas launching of the Arts Month of NCCA.
People and nature are coexisting with each other. We have beautiful landscapes up in the mountains. And historically, Pagunhons have made it also in the national scene. The very first executive secretary comes from Bago, Jorge Vargas. First Chief Justice, Yulu, comes from Bago. Then the Filipino who made it top sa United Nations, Rafael Salas, comes from Bago. And you have also the one who authored your labor laws, Senator Ramon Torres, a Bagunhon also. In a sense, we may be a quiet city, but we have also made it to the top.
Pilipinong mga pagdiriwang ay di lang basta-basta kasiyahan. Ang mga ito'y mayroon mas malalim na diwang pinag-uugatan. Mula sa pagkabuo ng isang bayan, mga paniniwalang pinapahalagahan.
Mga santong dinadambana hanggang sa kabayanihang inaalala. Halina't silipin ang mga pagdiriwang Bagunhon. Matuto habang nakikisaya sa kanilang mga selebrasyon.
Simula pa lang ng taon, mga mamamayan ng Bago'y agad-agad na nagtitipon-tipon. Unang araw ng Enero, bidang-bida ang inaabangan, Lights of Bago.
Buwan naman ng Pebrero'y di lamang buwan ng mga puso sa Bago. Ito rin ang buwan kanilang bayay idineklara bilang lungsod.
Bago is babaylan. It's about babaylanism, the shamans, the local shamans, the local witch, not even witch doctor, I don't want to call them witch doctor, but that's the loose English translation. It all started with that because babaylanism became a part of their struggle. This 5 de Noviembre.
In a meeting, we've decided to come up with the Babaylan Festival in honor of those healers. Of course, we had so many criticisms and everything, but I mean, it's just a tribute to the healing prowess of healers. Because when you look at it, they're not evil persons. In old history, maybe thousands of years ago, they're just the link between man and God, and their gods.
So to gather the loyalty of the people, Ser Juano or Juan Babaylan, that's Papa Isyo. So, may mga followers din siya. Katipunero, naging katipunero siya. Then for them, there was that attachment to his kind of philosophy na talagang may mga magnetic, dynamic, whatever character siya na talagang nakuha niya yung ano ng mga tao. That's why tinawag siyang Papa Isyo because for them, siya ang Santo Papa ng kanilang kultura, ng kanilang henerasyon during that time.
We decide that every presentation must have a storyline on the babaylan. I mean, you know, it's just not dance. They have to have a story, even with their community, anything. Babaylan can even be just the narrator. That's okay. But you see, to do the rituals can be very dangerous. So, as our festival statement would say, this is entertainment. If you want to know more, then do your own research to the babaylan. But it is our culture.
Kung taon ay inumpisahan ng makukulay na ilaw at paputok sa kalangitan, taon ay tatapusin rin ng naiibang paputok na nagparada sa mga daan ng kabayanan.
Mahalagang kasaysayang panlalawigan, inaalala ng mga bagonhon. Kwento'y ating alamin sa likod ng sigabong sang mga kanyo.
Historical treasure is one of which is the home of the General Juan Araneta, who led the November 5, 1898 revolution. Every year, sineselebrate namin yung 5 de Nobyembre.
We are celebrating our 121st al 5 de Nobyembre, so that's how long it has been celebrated, at least here in Bago City. Every year, the highlight of the celebration is a laying of wreath at the tomb of General Juan Araneta, followed by a civic military parade, and then cap off with a show of cannons. This is participated in by the 24 barangays. Each of them would have a cannon, and it has taken a life of its own because they are competing with one another, and it has grown into something that Bago City is known for, the loudest cannon.
Nadala na namin yan all over the Region 6. In fact, nadala namin ata yan in Manila. We have to minimize the lupok. Yung contest kasi is based on how strong is the boom.
We have other activities, especially the millennial perspective, because we would like to bring this to our youth. Not only are we inculcating the values that our forebears have handed down to us, but we want the young people to understand and to bring it to them what is the meaning of the sacrifices of General Juan Araneta to them.
4 years ago, we started the millennial perspective. Partly, how do you keep history alive with the young? We already have an inter-school here in Bago, because how can you keep them, interested in history?
Inday, nakapoy na ko magbasa. Gusto ko na makita ang actual na natapos ng 5 de Nobyembre para kung mag-recitation, ma-imagine nila mga ginapahambal kung doon hindi ko sa eksena.
Rason, naton tamaran ka lagi niya magbasa. O, ano nang bot mo silingon?
Gamiton tampamana ni Lola ang mahiwagang teleskopyo.
Sige kung ikala ko na biyabe, anong kaka-imagine mo nga kakalatabo during 5?
Kung ako ma-imagine, kakita ko mga revolusyonaryo. Katipon sila. Having different types of guns.
Hindi sila
wala pa ako natapos, Inday. Tanan sila may pusil.
Hindi sila pala tanan sa mo na pala nga tiyempo, bala mga manggaranan kag may koneksyon. Hindi pareha sa mga syndero nga may mga land para makasupply sila sa pusil.
Sige, may captain silang espada eh.
Espada man?
Sige, polo na lang tanan.
Hindi pala.
Instead of polo, naka-army sila. Tapos may kakanta.
labay. Kaso pa lamang ang tanan-tanan putang sang kalibutan. Ang mga matang isahay nagkayuman, ahay sa gihapon, ahay umagi lamang. Magic teleskopyo, ipakita sa amon na nagtapos sa nagliligad ang gisuguran kung ano pa natapos sa 5. Nagasobra na ang pagkaguwanta natin sa pangulipon sa mga stila! Miskin ako kakakulbaan, kaya wala sila may ginapili. Bata, tigulang, lalaki, babae, alipores man o prominente nga individual. Inapatag-ala kita nila sila gahom. Armas kaginiskwelahan para sugo ang matuman. Ang butigon, kagkawatan, hindi ginmangiban. Kaupod nyo kami sa sining na revolusyon! Kaupod nyo kami!
Ala, oo! May kabayloan ay sulupok sa may suba sa matabang sa talisay! 3 ka Kastila ang natumba! Gapadayo naman sa paglakat ang grupo nila Dunuan Araneta! Gapalupok sila sa mga kanyon para magpamahog! Hala, nakakita ko man ang nakakita sa mga Kastila! Do you see what I see? Sa mga tutuod, yung mga puset, yung mga kanyon, kapin pa sa south!
Kung kabalo lang sila nga.
It's a prank! Is, mabuhay ang mga revolusyonaryo nga Negrosanon yung nagsabat sa panawag sa Negros Freedom!
Kahilwayan!
Kahilwayan! Kahilwayan! Kahilwayan! Kahilwayan!
Ang makasaysayang al 5 de Nobyembre ay lumikha ng mga lokal na bayani sa buong lalawigan ng Negros. Ngunit dito sa lungsod ng Bago, isang pangalan ang pinagpipitagan ng mga mamamayang Bagonhon. Halina't ating kilalanin ang bayani dito sa bayan ng Bago nagmula, General Juan Araneta.
So in commemoration of the heroic acts of General Juan Araneta, commonly known here in Bago as Tan Juan, Tan being a terms of endearment or respect to a person, he led the forces of the South, beginning of course in Bago City.
On the 5th of November, they started marching early in the morning. So as he marched from way back out, about 50 kilometers away, when he started marching, his forces starts growing. He knew he only had 3 rifles, and everybody else was just carrying their bolos.
So they roll the amakan. The amakan are all this weaved bamboos made for drying, and they painted it with alkitran, black, and they turn it into as if it looked like rifle, and by droves they attacked the city of Bacolod, and when the Spaniards saw it, they thought they were all well armed.
That when the Spaniards will look into their telescope, and their telescope is nothing like the modern telescope, then they can see more or less silhouettes, 2,000 strong maybe, with all armed with rifles and lugging around cannons.
With that, Spaniards surrendered without a shot fired.
They surrendered without a shot. And that very afternoon, he paraded his people down in Bacolod. And that's they found out that they don't have anything except all those fake rifles.
Bahay ni General Juan ay tahanan noong unang panahon. Sa kasalukuyan naman, ito'y museo na ng mga Bagonhon. Mga donasyon ng antigong gamit, dito'y pinagtitipon-tipon. Ipinapakita ang mga sinaunang pamamaraan ng buhay. Kultura ng Bago, noon at ngayon.
When I first took over the house, it was given to me in 1992, there's nothing. So we have to conceptualize what to do about turning it into a museum. 2004. Cecil Belapas of UP and Brenda Fajardo of UP. So we got to talk together, and I told her, you know, Brenda, I really would like to have a community museum where it speaks of the community. Because when General Juan Araneta marched, it was not him alone. He brought the community with him to Bacolod. And so I think we should also dedicate a portion of the house to being a community museum. which is what happened here. What we did was we went to barangay, we talked to them about museums, and they find that if you can lend us or loan us or whatever, if you can donate it, better. Which is that's why we call it Buhay sa Bago, life in Bago. But it gives you representation of what is life, how we lived in Bago City, especially in the rural areas. We have a collection of telephones during used World War II. I mean, also speaks of life in Bago City. A little about World War II. And of course, we have to give tribute to rice and sugar. Especially sugar. We cannot put the whole sugar central into the museum, but that's glimpses of what it's like. And we couple it with drawings and photographs. And that's what you have now, a community museum built by the community.
Bukod sa likas na tanawing madalas napuntahan ng mga tao, mayroon ding mga lugar dito na may kalakip na kwento. Mula sa mga simbahan, lumang mga istruktura, gayon din ang mga palatandaan. Bago'y marami pang iba, lakas at ganda pinaghuhugutan. Turismo ng isang bayay mas uunlad at sumisigla kapag karanasang iniaalay sa mga bisitay na kaugat sa kultura.
One of the oldest churches in Negros is Bago Church. We were made into a pueblo in 1800 only. But we were a parish sometime in 1700s, late 1700s, we were a parish. But unfortunately, the parish priest returned to Spain. So we were back to being just a visita. General Juan Araneta was not a religious man. All her children, after the revolution, was baptized Aglipay, the Philippine Independent Church. Until now, the Philippine Independent Church is very strong in Bago.
Bago City is located both in the coastal area and mountainous area. So, pag pumunta ka going to the mountain side of Bago City, maraming mountain resort doon. So, isa na to ang Buenos Aires Mountain Resort na owned by the city government of Bago. At saka maraming privately owned na resorts. Nang na-develop ng city yung that particular area, meron ng electricity, meron ng road network. So marami nang nagpatayo ng mga rest houses doon sa mga bukid.
We have been positioning ourselves as the agro-industrial center of Negros Occidental, of the province. To that end, we are keen in inviting investors in the agro-industrial and manufacturing business, adding value to what we have here. Although commercially you cannot see it, but it's in the agri sector that they have invested in. Alcohol distilleries, rice mills everywhere, feed mills, and other manufacturing that use our natural resource here. To top the investment sector, we are also keen in improving our tourism. I think we're one of the first to have this farm tourism, where we incorporate agriculture, farming life as a tourism destination. And every year we have that. We have people from all over Negros Occidental come to Bago City and have a tour of our farming community.
Itong organic farming, isa ito sa mga tourist destinations namin dito. So we are planning to double this through pag-develop ng maraming destinations pa. Like this one here in Bantayan Park, we will be developing this into also a tourist attractions for both locals and those who are from the neighboring towns and cities. These two falls, one is Kipo Twin Falls kasi ang Bago City, they are located pa kasi on the foot of Mount Canlaon. So yung forest namin, it's still intact. Marami pang falls na galing doon sa Mount Canlaon.
Pamanang bahay ay higit pa sa integridad ng kanyang istruktura. Higit pa sa ganda ng mga muebles sa loob nito'y makikita. Halaga ng isang lugar sa mga taong minsay dito nanahan, matatagpuan. Tulad nitong Balay Dako, hatid ay kwentong inspirasyon at ambag sa pamayanan.
Hi, welcome to our ancestral home. We call this Balay Dako. It's the ancestral home of the Havellanas here in Bago, the Villanueva Havellanas family. So this was built in 1946. These are still in their original state. Our tiles here, I think this came from Spain. So this is my great-grandparents, Trinidad Villanueva Havellana and Glicerio Season Havellana. And these are their children. We have like around 10 to 12 rooms here. And actually this house, we house several scholars here. That's really the beauty of this house. Aside from the family, we house many scholars here also who we sent to school, my grandparents sent to school. This was never open to the public until the city celebrated our 50th year. So the family gathered and we said, it's probably about time we open the house to the city, because usually we just get comments, we just look up there in your house, you don't even know how it looks. We made some sort of a mini tour of the house, and they some really good painters did the portraits of my grandmother. I mentioned about Araceli Dance doing their portraits, and there are a lot of things that are here that they source from abroad every time because they're so well traveled. From having so much, we have this responsibility always to look back, to give back. And then if there is one thing I learned from this family is that really to protect and preserve our good name. And also, I want to share with you, they're just we call these 5Gs here in our family. It's that we have always to be grounded, that we always try to be generous, that we always try to be gracious in our speech, in our actions, and to always be grateful, to always look up and just really be thankful of all these blessings, and that to always give back. That's it. That's probably really the Villanueva Havellana legacy that we are so proud to embrace. In Bago, people will always say this is Balay Dako. But for us, beyond being called Balay Dako, hindi nga balay, if I would like to say it in our language, local language here, ang balay na naghatag paglaom sa damo ng mga tao nga nabuligan diri kay naka-eskwela sila. This house will mean the house of hope, where because of the legacy of giving of this family transformed many lives, and that what will matter in the next generation.
Kilala ang lalawigan ng Negros sa industriya ng asukal. Tubo ang pangunahing kalakal, sakop ay hasye-hasyenda ang kalupaan. Sa kasalukuyay umusbong ng iba't ibang industriya dito sa Bago. Yaman ng lupa ay di lamang sa pagtatanim limitado. Iba't ibang produktong nililika ng mga tao. Mga likhang kayamanang nakakarating sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Tumandog crafts industries. Paano nagsimula? Alamin natin ang buong kwento.
mga products namin dito ngayon po yung mga ginagawa namin. Bali, mga laminated siya na ng wall decors, mga fiberglass na lampshade, picture frames, jewelry box, and iba't ibang klase ng mga home accessories at saka bathroom accessories. Halos naman lahat kayo ginagawa namin. Depende sa customer na nag-order sa amin. Bali po, marami kaming department. Yung una po sa karkas po, dalawa po yung karkas namin, fiberglass at saka carpenter. Yung kako yung isa at saka yung fiberglass. Karamihan doon po yung mga lampshade yung ginagawa namin sa karkas na sa fiberglass. Pangalawa yung sa pasting. Sa pasting naman po sila yung dumidikit ng mga materials na ginagamit, dinidikit sa mga karkas po. Sa pangatlo yung sa lamination at sila yung naglalagay ng mga tinatawag namin na resin po. Saka pre-finishing at saka finishing. Sa pre-finishing po yung ginagawa nila, sila po yung nagpa-process ng lahat naglilihan para pagandahin yung galing sa lamination. Sila po yung nagpa-process talaga ng lahat. Pre po, siya na po yung nagpapakintab ng mga items namin at saka last po dito sa packing. Sa packing naman po, sila na po yung nagbabalot at saka sila na yung nag-QC ng mga items namin, sila yung nagbabalot at saka pa-deliver na rin po. Napakalaki po ng naitulong ng tumandok ng hindi lang sa physical na ugali namin kundi ang pinakamalaki talaga sa spiritual na binibigyan sila namin ng mga kabuhayan na katulad ng dinadala lang nila sa kanilang bahay doon ginagawa.
Bukod sa tumandok, isa pang grupo ang dapat kilalanin dito sa lungsod ng Bago. Mula sa mga kosmetikong tunay na nakapagpapaganda, sila'y kilala rin sa kanilang produksyon ng sutla. Ngunit higit pa sa kanilang mga nililikha, kanilang iba pang programa ay kahanga-hanga. Mga layuning nagpaunlad sa mga pamayanan, pinakadiwa ng Owiska.
We have also Uwiska. It's also being operated by a Japanese organization, which the acronym is Uwiska. It's Organization for Industrial, Socio-Cultural Advancement. Nag-wave sila using silk naman. Sila yung mismo ang nag-produce ng silk.
Uwiska aims to uplift the quality of life of people, especially at the grassroots. Uwiska really is targeting the overall development of a community. The founder of Uwiska believed that people should not only progress materially, but also spiritually. So it's respect for all religions. We started this as a livelihood for the farmers. We never thought we would be producing the bulk of the silk now being supplied to the local market. Our aim now is also to put the Philippines in the silk producing map. Our silk is of very, very high quality. Excellent quality. So that gives us enough inspiration to really go on because the water, especially the water here in Negros and the soil, very, very good for the mulberries, and the mulberries are our capital for the production of silk because the silkworms do not eat anything else, only mulberry leaves.
Nandito tayo sa breeding section na kung saan lahat ng mga cocoons na kailangan i-breed natin dito dadalhin. Yung mga defective ones kailangan i-remove natin, cut those cocoons para makuha natin all of the pupa na mapalabas natin. And then now we can separate the male and the female. Kailangan ma-separate natin. So dito sa breeding section, kailangan natin next generation, kailangan kukunan natin ng eggs. Kailangan may itlog na tayo na makukuha para sa ating mga farmers. Okay, so yung mga farmers natin, alagaan nila na mga silkworms, ayon sa capacity ng kanilang mulberry, dito natin dadalhin sa nursery. Kung saan dito natin alagaan yung newly hatched worm for about 7 days. So yung worms natin merong stages, first, second, third, and fourth stage. Hindi ito papasok sa next stage kung hindi dadaan sa multi-stage. So ngayon yung worm natin, nasa second stage na siya. about 6 days old, then papasok na siya sa second stage. Ngayon, pag newly hatched na siya, third stage na siya, ito na yung timing na pagdala natin sa farmers. Okay, so nandito tayo ngayon sa mulberry plantation, no? So yung kahoy na to makikita niyo, ito yung mulberry, no? Ang scientific name nito is Moros. Actually, tinanim natin to for our silkworms, pero marami pang magagamitan nito. So ngayon, bakit malawak? Because one box natin, yung one box ng mulberry silkworm natin, kung makain ng one box natin is 700 to 800 kilos of mulberry leaves including branches. So dito tayo ngayon sa Kanbetsu room, or kung saan dito natin pinipili yung male at saka female. Tingnan natin, pag malalaki, 50% yan na female kasi most of the female merong eggs, merong itlog sa loob. So next, proving natin dito sa bandang ilalim, makita natin may mark na V. Parang V siya. So proving na yun ay female. So separate natin yung female. At saka yung mga males naman, yung mga lalaki, kadalasan yung mga lalaki, first makita natin maliliit sila kasi walang itlog. Then next, yung proving natin dito sa bandang ilalim, makikita natin parang dot lang siya. Ito naman yung mga chillers natin na kung nag-moth na, yung mga male moth nag-emerge na, ilalagay natin sa box lahat ng mga moth at dito siya ipapasok. Kailangan yung mga moth natin hindi ma-stress bago mag-emerge yung mga female moth for perfect timing for mating. Makita po natin ito yung sa lalagyan na to. Ito na yung mga empty cocoons, no, na nakuha na natin yung mga pupa sa loob at saka ginamit natin for breeding. Now ito hindi ibig sabihin na walang silbi, ngunit magagamit natin to for making parang handkerchief siya, and then we're going to use it for making thread, no? Yung machine spun silk at saka yung finger spun silk na yun ang dinadala ng mga nanay sa bahay nila, then they're going to make thread. No? Ang mga kuko ng mga farmers na na-harvest na natin, dito dadalhin. And then, buhay pa yung pupa sa loob, ida-dry natin to for about 7 to 8 hours. No? Then pagkatapos, ma-dry na natin yung sa loob nito, yung pupa, nakita natin kanina, crispy na po parang chicharon. So, yung kuko na to, ready na for storing and ready na for reeling process.
Sa bawat paglalakbay, sadyang kasama na sa karanasan, pagtuklas ng mga naiibang pagkain na tatangi sa isang bayan. Siguradong kayo'y pamilyar sa masarap na empanada. Dito sa Bago'y ipinagmamalaki nila ang kanilang panara.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Narito po tayo ngayon sa Bago City. Ipapakita namin sa inyo kung paano magluto ng isa po naming food delicacy na ang tawag ay panara. So, narito po yung ating mga ingredients. Para sa dough, rice flour, natto seeds or achuete, asin. Para naman po sa ating filling, meron po tayong bawang at saka sibuyas na panggisa, giniling, at saka shrimp po, pinagsama na. Sayote, toge, spring onions. Meron na po ditong nilagay si Tita Lourdes na tubig at saka achuete po. And then, lalagyan ng asin. Pagkatapos, ilalagay na po yung rice flour. Halo-halo lang po hanggang sama-sama na lahat. Next po, igigisa po natin muna yung ating filling. Unahin po natin yung bawang at saka sibuyas. And then, isusunod po natin yung pork at saka shrimp. And then, yung toge. Sunod po, ilalagay na po natin yung sayote. And then, isisison lang po natin siya ng Bago sea salt. So, ibabalot na po yung panara. Ito na po yung finished product, ang isa sa mga the best na food delicacy ng Bago City, ang panara. Dali na, makaon na ta!
Mga kabataang Negrense, sa Sa kultura ay pinalaki ng may malasakit. Kasaysayan ng kanilang bayan sa kanilang pagkatao'y nakaugat ng mahigpit.
Mula sa paglikha ng pelikula, awit, tula, hanggang dula, kanilang talento ay ginamit sa makabuluhang paraan upang ilaan sa mga bayani ang tunay na paggunita.
Paghagis ng alikabok ng katapangan, sabay tayong babalik sa nakaraan. Mga alaala ng kabayanihan ay patuloy na pinanghahawakan ng aking mga kamay, puso't isipan. Kahit na ang iyong katawang lupa'y kinain na ng mga uod, pero hindi pa rin kami mapapagod sa pagdalaw, sa pagpunta sa iyong puntod taon-taon. Sabay sindi ng kandilang umaalala sa kabayanihan mo, sabay bigkas ng mga katagang salamat. Salamat kasi pinagtanggol mo kami. Salamat kasi sa bayang ito ikay nagsilbi. Salamat kasi hindi ka nagdalawang isip na kalabanin ang mga dayuhan na gustong sumakop sa amin. Mga dayuhan na gustong sumakop sa atin. Ikay taas noo. Buong pusong inalay ang sarili mo para sa kalayaan ng mga tao, para sa kapayapaan ng lungsod ng Bago.
Sa natapok ng gera, dapat natin respetuhin ang bayaning natin nakipagbato para sa atin. Wala yagid din paminsar kung ano ang matabo. Ang gusto yan lang ang negros aton ipagbato sa mga Espanyol nga gusto kita sa kupon. Pero hindi nila mahimo isog negrosanong na ginapangunahan ni General Aranesa. 1898 nagsanib kita nga tanan, ginimo naton tanan para lang madipinsahan ang atong syudad nga aton ginahalungan. Kay gusto kita sa kupon sa Espanyol nga mananakop, pero aton nga general hindi gidya magpasakop sa mga Espanyol nga gusto gidya mangguba. Trip nila sa kupon aton syudad nga pinalangga, pero si General Juan gingamit ang kaalam mo nagimos sa amakan sang madamo nga kanyon butang yan ni sa kariton kag initanan. Sa natabo nga gera diri sa aton syudad, nagpagugid ang tanan, ginpagbatok ta sa aton nga bayani nga si General Juan. Nakipagbato sa para sa aton nga tanan, ipabugal aton nga bayani si General Juan.
Mga kababayan, ito ang Likhang Yaman ng lungsod ng Bago sa Negros Occidental.
Sa ating paglalakbay sa iba't ibang bayan, hanap natin di lamang mga bagay na sumasalamin sa ating angking galing at ganda bilang mamamayan.
Higit pa rito ay hanap natin ang iba't ibang uri ng inspirasyon ating maaaring matagpuan sa iba't ibang panig hanggang sa mga kasulok-sulukan ng ating bayan.
Mga inspirasyong tunay na yamang Filipino, tulad ng ehemplo at Likhang Yaman ng lungsod ng Bago. Ako po si Akiro Blanco.
At ako naman si Lara Maige. Kami samahan linggo-linggo sa tuloy-tuloy na pagtuklas sa mayamang kalinangang Filipino dito lang sa Sagisag Kultura TV.
Habang buhay Filipino.
Ikot sandaang mga isla, magkakahiwalay ngunit nagkakaisa. Tahanan ng aming lahi, mga pook na aming ninimithi.
Puno ng kasaysayan, puno ng hiwaga. Sa mga lugar na ito nakatanim ang ugat ng pagka-Pilipino. Ako ay Filipino, ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Filipino, ako'y makatao. Saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling, aangat ang galing habang buhay Filipino. Sa buhaw ng langit at dagat, mula sa pulang alin mo'y tugok, hinalo sa dilaw na araw at bituin. Yan ang kulay ng katatagan, yan kulay ng kagitingan, buong tapang na sumisigaw. Yan ang Pilipino. Ako ay Filipino, ako'y makadiyos. Ako naging okasyon. Pagdiriwang ang aming kasiyahan, ipinagbubunyi ang kalayaan. Pinupuri ang katapangan, kapanganakan, pag-iisang dito. Pagbabalik bayan o talino ng tatagisan, ipagdiwang natin ang pagiging Pilipino. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makatao. Saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling, aangat ang galing habang buhay Pilipino.
There is much to be learned from people who have lived on this land much longer than we have. A knowledge that manifests itself not only in their relationships with nature, their songs and epics, their technology and creations, but in their very survival. Only by being aware of this heritage of the indigenous can we find not only our roots, but our direction. Their pride and ours, captured in one word, Dayaw. In an age of increasing globalization, we Filipinos are constantly reminded to look back to the vast stores of indigenous knowledge that, like our own natural resources, are in danger of being forever lost. We have much to learn from our indigenous peoples, vast stores of knowledge, technologies, and ways of life that guaranteed not only survival, but a distinct identity. Lupa, Karagatan, Kagubatan, an environment that inspired our indigenous peoples to make the best use of resources while guaranteeing a precious balance, a balance where we are so in danger of losing today. Grand to look at, astounding to behold. Challenging to understand. The Ifugao rice terraces represent a dynamic indigenous response to the environment. One that combines hard work and tenacious industry with a deep understanding of how our forests, watersheds, mountainous terrain, and engineering can come together to guarantee a people's survival. The age of these terraces is much debated. Some scholars have said that these marvels are 2,000 or 3,000 years old. Recent archaeological evidence points to a much later dating and posits that these terraces were built by the lowland ancestors of the Ifugaos who were fleeing the Spanish colonizers. But whether they are 3,000 or 300 years old, what is most astounding is that the Ifugao have carved from the Gran Cordillera mountain range an entire system capable of supporting life, sustaining natural resources, and enhancing a vibrant culture. While we see tourist attractions, the Ifugao see their very survival and the environment that must be harnessed sustainably. In Kinakin, a village not normally on the tourist route, we learn the ways in which these payo, the terrace fields, are a result of a complex system of knowledge that has served the Ifugao well.
Itong rice terraces na ito, we called it chape rice terraces. It's a part of the study of Hollow Conquin based in Bayninan, isang sitio ng Kinakin. Doon nag-stay si Conquin, pinag-aralan yung culture, rice field ng mga tao doon sa Bayninan sitio. I think yung pangalan na ito, Chape means parang nag-i-slow na terraces. If you could see yung akyat, katapos yung creek, nakadirect yung irrigation sa terraces. Pakikita natin more angles dito sa Chape rice terraces. Ito ang pinaka-best, among the best of the terraces in Kinakin, sa barangay Kinakin.
The Ifugao system of terracing begins first with irrigation.
Itong mga tubig, ma'am, galing sa mga forest namin, sa communal at saka private forest. Doon galing yung mga tubig na nakikita natin. Pagkatapos, minimaintain namin din yung mga forest areas. Meron tayong kanal na ginagawa. At saka yung mga ito, yung direct na galing sa creek, maggagawa tayo ng harang, patapos pupunta yung tubig sa rice field. Galing doon sa taas, yung forested area. Tapos dito naman sa baba, meron private forest, pero protected. Tanim namin kahoy para meron tayong supply ng water sa rice fields natin. Through gravity, kasi from the taas, tapos pababa. Initially, galing sila sa creek. Pagkatapos dinalagyan ng maliit na irigasyon papunta sa rice paddies.
The watersheds that feed the payo do so with nothing simpler or more durable than bamboo tubes or roughly hewn cairns. The Ifugao have worked out traditional systems of social sharing in which the precious water is distributed equally among families. The hardest work goes into building and maintaining these terraces. No matter how sturdy they may look, a storm, a sudden surge of too much water can cause the walls to collapse. And with nothing more than simple tools and muscle, the walls must be rebuilt again, the water distribution systems restored. Then the hard work of creating and maintaining the stone walls begins.
Yung ibang stone walls, naabutan namin. Pero yung kadalasan na nakikita natin, yung nagre-repair na. Yung halimbawa, nasira na stone walling, rini-repair namin. Bago mag-start ng cultivation ng rice field, yan na, inumpisa na yung stone walling. May the time na naayos na yung stone walling na umakyat na dito, yan na, taniman na, pati yung na-erode kasama sa tinataniman na. Ito yung mga natutunan namin sa mga ninuno namin, mga parents namin. Kasi palagi, alam mo yung hanap buhay namin dito, taniman lang na ganito. Kahit once a year, pero tinuturo sa amin paano mag-alaga, paano magtanim ng palay. Ito, ma'am, yung sinasabi natin na foundation. Sabi namin dito sa Ifugao, gopnad. Kung nakikita natin, malalaki yung dito sa baba, followed by yung medyo maliliit ng konti, hanggang akyat dito sa taas. Kailangan, pag patas din yung pare-parehas yung pare-pareho nung stone walling. Walang semento na ginagamit namin dito, yung soil, yung lupa na pagdikit sa bawat stone wall, bato.
So important are the terraces that the matter of inheritance must always be settled beforehand to avoid division in the family.
Just after marriage, tinuro sa amin yung palayan mo, rice field mo, ito sa iyo. Ituturo yung boundaries or ilan paddies, ilan area ng rice field. Yung partidos ng asawa mo, sila na ang mag-aani. That shows na ibigay sa inyo. Yung ani, pagkatapos, yun din ang sasabihin namin sa mga anak namin. Na ito rin yung ina-inherit namin sa magulang namin, ito rin para sa inyo. Sinabi ko sa mga anak ko, I'm encouraging them na dapat alam nilang magtanim, mag-alaga ng rice field. Kasi iyon yung, dito galing yung supply natin sa rice.
I find it a great irony that the Philippines now has to import rice when the Ifagaos mastered such rugged terrain to be able to produce it. Of course, times have changed and populations have grown dramatically. But what do we stand to lose by carefully looking at how the Ifagaos worked the mountains, not to change them, but to make the best of what nature had challenged them with? All over the Cordillera region, our indigenous peoples have developed their own ingenious and innovative methods of land use that are both respectful and creative. Terracing is not exclusive to the Ifugao. Other indigenous groups have also developed their own forms of terracing, whether on gentle slopes or high plateaus. The terraces of the Cordillera are studies in natural form dictating function and purpose. Along with such adaptation come belief systems, architecture, ritual, and custom in such animist societies as the Ifugao. Nature, its spirits, its features, its rhythms, and cycles are what shape the way they live, believe, and commune with the deities and with one another.
Ayap pahubriyan at kinumunti pahirap na yaat yamun okpop ariyo yamun ok kala natin ang kyahayan na.
From the mountains to the seas and to the adventure of one very modern man who looked at and experienced for himself the ways in which the Sama Dilaut of Sulu mastered the seas. In an archipelago such as ours, why do many of us know so little about the boat-building techniques that allowed our ancestors to travel, trade, and even live on the waters surrounding our islands? For generations, the master boatmen or tukang of Sulu, specifically Sibutu Island, have been turning out boats known for their speed, lightness, ability to ride the waves. The kumpit, kampuan, sapit, and birabira are only four of the variants of the boat form that the Sibutu masters are expert in building. With such vessels as these, the traders of Sulu traversed the waters of Holo, reaching as far as Borneo, Malaysia, and Brunei. The secret of these boats is a hull designed to ride the waves. The main body is constructed from planks that the tukang constructs, not from paper plans, but from his own combination of practical know-how and memory. The body of the boat, with its streamlined hull, is constructed from logs first, before the rib framework or gusok is put in. This simple, elegant form was designed to be powered by the wind, but it is so versatile, it can be adapted to motor and diesel engine. A testament to a technology that is as old as a balanghais, and yet as current as any yacht. One man chose to experience this technology for himself, and it was the adventure of his life.
Well, actually, it started after coming down from Mount Everest. We thought, what's next? Why not build the boat that our forefathers used in their waves of migration, and as authentic as possible? What happened then was that I went here at the National Museum, talked to the archaeological section, and asked for advice. And they said that this is how the boat was built. They gave me a handbook of Father Alsina, the Jesuit maritime priest. during Spanish time. And I looked at it and I said, who can build this boat? He said, no one now among the people, except if you go to Batanes, the Ibatans built the same kind of boat, or you go to Tawi-Tawi, the Sama Dilaya, they still built that kind of boat. So I went to Tawi-Tawi and looked at how they built the boats, and that's how it started.
Displayed in one of the courtyards of the National Museum is the very boat that Art Valdez commissioned from the Sama Dilaot. He encouraged them to use all their knowledge in constructing this one boat in as traditional a manner as possible.
Then I saw that it's still the traditional way of boat building, shell-first construction. If you've noticed, the modern boat building is that once the keel is set, they put up the ribs and then the walls or the sidings. But the shell-first construction is that you have the keel and then you build planks. You build a shell of this kind. And then the ribs is the last part that you put it together. So I went out and did research, and I asked the National Museum that I can build an authentic balangay based from the diggings in Butuan. And that's how the boat was built.
Valdez experienced for himself just how effective this method of building was. And he was amazed to find out that the master builders could calculate and design based purely on experience and memory.
But I was not content enough because I'd like to ensure that the boat is really fit to travel in open seas. So while they're building the boat, I also asked the Society of Naval Architects and Maritime Engineers that the boat we're building is also technology-wise, based on science, is really fit to sail on open seas and even oceans at that. And they made a hydrostatic study on the performance of the boat because I asked the master builder, Asama Delaya, what is the draft? How deep is the water for this boat to float? At 2 feet of water, it will float. And then I asked the naval architects, what is the result of your hydrostatic study of the boat? And they said that, sir, at 18 inches, your boat will float. Science has confirmed their technical capability to build that kind of boat.
In a courtyard of the National Museum, Art Valdez's boat sits far away from the rough seas it has journeyed on. 18 men accompanied him, his friends from the Mount Everest team, Coast Guard, and the Navy. But the most indispensable were the Sama boat builders themselves.
Especially at the time when the seas become so rough, and they have to tell me, sir, hindi na natin kaya yan eh. Ay, sir, huwag na tayong didiretso, hanap muna tayo ng isla pagtaguan. They're quite familiar of the performance of the boat kung kaya talaga namin yung sobrang laki ng alon. The boat is powered by the wind and steered by the stars. Celestial navigation. That's how it was. And we try to be as faithful as possible the way our forefathers said. This has been handed from generation to generation. That would explain why that indeed we're really a maritime people.
The mountains, the seas, both are equally demanding environments, yet the Ifugaos of the Cordilleras and the Sama Dilaot of Sulu have mastered these environments. Or is mastered really the right word? Did they simply and over time study their environments and make the best of what they had without really trying to conquer anything? What other knowledge systems were born out of a respect for the environment? And what treasures of our intangible heritage did they yield? The environment as a source of music and art. But of course, among the Palaweños, the forests and skies over their mountain homes are inspiration for their unique music. A music that echoes the very songs of the birds and the wind. The people of Palawan have no monumental structures of architecture, agriculture, or technology. The people of Palawan have a very fine artistic tradition of mat and basket weaving, considered the most colorful and intricate in the country. Their tingkop baskets are masterpieces of delicate, painstaking, skillful art. And they can be proud of a unique form of intangible heritage, a language of music that is a direct response to nature. It was the renowned anthropologist Nicole Revel who studied the ways of life of the semi-nomadic Palawanon. Her studies revealed a unique musicology that was inspired by and responded to the sounds of the sheltering forests. In this rare footage, the late Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan or Gamaba awardee Masino Intaray demonstrates the complex rhythm patterns etched out on the simplest of instruments.
There are so many things that we can learn from the animist groups. One of the most important is that the animists, that's why they're called animists, believe that everything is animated by the life principle. That means everything is alive. Rocks, water, earth, fire, all of these are alive, especially trees. The moment you believe that trees, mountains have spirits, you'll be afraid to destroy. You'll be afraid to log forests just for timber, because there are beings inside them. Once you lose the idea that nature has spirits, then you will no longer respect nature.
When we see what we have done to our forests, our coastlines, our mountains, we don't just see crimes against the environment. By destroying these, we have also taken away from our indigenous peoples their sources of life, their identities, the very sounds of nature that inspires art as complex as any way we can create. A collage of images and connections. That is how we've envisioned Dayaw, a mountain range and its terraces, the sea and the vessels that ride its waves, a forest and the music that both nature and man create. Always show how our indigenous peoples and different environments all over the archipelago have developed not only survival skills and technologies, but a vital art as well, a true source of Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.
Padayon